Hi, Manez.
Hi, Lawrence. How are you doing?
Doing well, doing well. I'm happy we made this happen and it's finally the day of the conference. I will leave you to it and you will be introducing our next speaker.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much, Lawrence. And again, definitely thank you so much, Lucia, for that incredible talk. So our next speaker is actually going to make a turn in a very different sort of industry. He's going to be going over the aviation industry, and that's something that we don't really hear in terms of the intersection between blockchain and aviation. So we're really excited to have him here. He'll be on board with us very shortly. We're going to be exploring about his company, about the technology behind the innovations behind his company, as well as the disruption that is taking place in the aviation industry as a result of his work. So we're really excited for him to join. Ali, if you could click to share your audio and video, we can get it started. Brilliant. Ali, we're really delighted to have you here today. So Ali is the chief software architect of SkyGrid, SkyGrid being a Boeing-backed company and the only company deploying airspace management system utilizing artificial intelligence and blockchain technologies. So this is cutting edge innovation that we have not seen in recent years. And Ali's going to be exploring about SkyGrid's technology, about the disruption and use cases, as well as the way forward. Without further ado, I'm going to hand the floor over to Ali.
Thank you so much, Manaz, and thank you for having me. I'm gonna share my presentation here, and hopefully that'll show up shortly. It's just a short presentation that covers what SkyGrid does, and more importantly, how we're utilizing blockchain. So, as Manaz mentioned, my name is Ali Husain. I'm the chief software architect at SkyGrid, which is a joint venture between the Boeing company and Spark Cognition, which is an AI company based out of Austin, Texas. And our objective, we were founded a couple of years ago in early 2019, and our objective has really been to safely and securely integrate drones into the global airspace. We're seeing more and more drones enter the airspace globally, and we wanted to be able to build a system that would scale and be able to support all of the wide variety of use cases that we see, from delivery to surveillance to search and rescue, so on. And the way that we went about doing that was by creating what we call the aerial operating system, first of its kind, and that is broken up into three primary components. As you can see on the slide here, we'll cover these briefly and then dive into specifically how SkyGrid leverages blockchain as a key part of our infrastructure and how it benefits us. So airspace awareness is primarily geared towards displaying all the relevant information that an operator or group of operators might need to see in order to safely conduct their drone operations. And to that effect, we built a back-end engine that takes data from a large number of data sources, things like weather, like terrain, micro weather, radar feeds, air traffic, ground traffic, a bunch of stuff really. And the key piece there is that airspace awareness can integrate with pretty much whatever data source an organization might have. So any sort of custom data sources that they want to be able to pull in and show layered visually on a map that aids operators in their drone flights. Then we have the flight planning component of the aerial operating system. And what flight planning enables us to do is create safe and secure routes for all of these different missions that operators are wanting to carry out. Not only does this include pre-flight planning, but also in-flight rerouting and deconflicting if there are, say, any NOTAMs, notice to airman issued, or a certain area has been deemed a no-fly zone due to, say, an emergency happening there and a helicopter being flown over that area. Things like that. The other thing that SkyGrid does is we're integrated with the FAA as a certified LANC provider. LANC is the US low altitude authorization and notification capability that allows drone operators to operate within restricted airspace. And we also work with a number of regulatory agencies around the world to provide UTM infrastructure. And then lastly, the fleet management component of our module allows operators to set up maintenance schedules for their fleet, to enable fleet-wide cybersecurity. And this is something that we've been very excited about. SkyGrid, in partnership with Spark Cognition, one of our parent companies, we recently deployed AI anti-malware solution on drones that were flown. We had folks on our red team attack those drones with malicious software. And these are drones that have no reliance or dependency on a remote server of any kind. So it's a self-contained solution. And they were able to detect and quarantine malware. This is something that, as we see more and more drones in the global airspace, security is going to become a key issue. And this sort of infrastructure enables us to be able to take care of those needs. Let's dive a little bit deeper into these three modules that I spoke about, specifically from the context of blockchain. Blockchain, as well as AI, is a key component in the SkyGrid solution. And one of the ways that it's very important for airspace awareness, as I mentioned earlier, the goal with airspace awareness was to integrate as many data service providers as we can and create this rich, easy to view map that enables operators to conduct their operations safely. The data flowing into airspace awareness is obviously, very large streaming data. I mentioned a few examples like weather and NOTAMs, etc. And this data is used by other components of the SkyGrid solution to do flight planning, so on. So one of the things that happens as part of our regular workflow is that we're storing all of this data. Obviously, this is too vast to efficiently store on chain, but we're storing hashes of this data on chain and then having the corresponding data stored in off-chain storage. This allows us to take snapshots at key moments during flight planning, deconfliction, etc. Or, say a NOTAM has been issued and we want to kind of update one of the flights that's in progress. So it provides us with not only all of these key snapshots, but those snapshots in turn tell a story and explain why the actions that were taken are being taken and how we arrived at the decisions that were made during, say, a deconfliction of a flight that's currently being flown. On the flight planning side, the key things here are to be able to comply with national and regional regulations and have those rules be enforced efficiently, as well as minimizing the risk of human error or oversight into leading to a particular rule being violated. And so, because we have blockchain available to us, a lot of these regulatory rules and company policies can be enforced via smart contracts. And so an example of this would be, let's say I have a company policy that prevents me from flying in wind speeds that, exceed 15 miles an hour because, the drones I have are super small and super light, etc. And so, pre-flight, it's pretty simple because you would just, violate that condition because the weather stream that's coming in lets you know that this area is way too windy, and you never get a flight created and you never move beyond that. But in cases where flights are already in progress, we will have this option of, invoking these smart contracts that can have certain fallback actions associated with them. So, for example, let's say I have a few safe landing zones throughout the city where I'm operating, and as soon as this wind speed situation occurs, my drone is automatically going to be able to land in the nearest safe zone. And then finally, fleet management. So the SkyGrid fleet management suite has, it's primarily geared towards the efficient allocation of drones across multiple sites, so fleet distribution, maintenance operations, as well as security on the drones themselves. And maintenance is a great example that again illustrates the use of blockchain. So, similar to the case with flight planning, we have a drone in flight. The drone has been flown for over 100 hours. The battery life is degrading. The drone automatically creates this maintenance request and says, when I land, I need my battery replaced because the battery life's really degraded. And as soon as that drone lands, the smart contracts in effect will make it ineligible to fly. So even if I try and assign a flight plan to that particular drone, I won't be able to do so. I will be prevented from using that drone for any sort of activity until a maintenance technician takes that work order, completes that work order, and then then signs off on that order with their private key. Does the drone go back into service? And effectively what this creates is this audit trail as well as accountability for all of the actions that are being taken by persons in the ecosystem. So this is really how we're utilizing blockchain across the SkyGrid platform to ensure safety and security. And it's very exciting to us to think about the future. The possibilities are really endless. And, one of the things I have on this slide is, one potential outcome where we have a, global private chain where all of the participants are known and trusted, because this is just a space where you wouldn't want, entities with which you have no trust to be able to operate in the global airspace. And you have a fully decentralized system with blockchain nodes being hosted by regulatory authorities around the world. This enables a very, very exciting future for global aviation. I don't know if this is the exact one that we're going to get to, but I think it's safe to say that we're going to be seeing a lot more blockchain in the global aviation space. And that is it for my presentation. So if there are any questions, we can move on to those.
Thank you so much, Ali. That was very insightful. Well, first of all, we have a question from Jamie here. The question is, do you know how these progressions with aerial OS are currently being employed in the military or in distribution companies like Amazon? And what further applications of this technology do you see in the future?
I think that so. Thank you. That's a wonderful question. The use cases that we're seeing a lot of on the civilian side, search and rescue. You have last mile delivery, package distribution, etc. These are all being done in a fairly limited way currently, and part of that is obviously because you'll have drones flying through over heavily congested areas, being a part of our daily lives in cities. So rightfully so, regulatory authorities are making sure that everyone is taking the steps needed to do this in a diligent and careful, methodical way. I think there are a number of applications, and we see a lot of them today, things like wedding photography and surveying farmland and pipeline inspections, bridge inspections. I just think those will become a lot more widespread. And we will, kind of see that explode in the coming years.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Ali. We have another question from Octave. What blockchain are you guys using for smart contracts?
Yes, so we're using a private instance of EOS.io. This is the blockchain that was created by Block One. It's open source, so that's the one that we're utilizing, and it's done very well for us.
Okay, that's brilliant. Avita is asking, as blockchain technology revolves around the concept of digital identity, how can we cater to the database requirements and the feasibility for a better and secure system?
Concept of digital identity and how can we cater? So I think the blockchain takes care of that somewhat, because the way that I think about it and I describe it to folks is it at the end of the day is just a decentralized database providing certain guarantees as a trait of what it means to be a blockchain, such as auditability and the fact that you have data that once written is immutable, so on and so forth. So I think and that's what we're doing. So and I can talk to that a little bit more here. Every single person who's onboarded into a SkyGrid system, and I shouldn't say person, I should say entity, because this is true for, let's say you're using our application on the iPad, or you have a drone that you've registered with the system, or you have a user. Each entity has their own unique private public key pair that we're not storing any of that information. And that is what enables us to create this accurate audit trail. One of the examples that I mentioned in the fleet management phase was I have my drone out of service, and not until and unless will a maintenance tech perform all of those maintenance steps and sign off, does it go back into service. What if the maintenance tech doesn't do a good job? That's exactly why we have such a system in place, because, God forbid something happens, you can go through, audit all of these actions and know exactly who it was who was responsible, what they say they did, and, kind of correlate that with what went wrong with the flight or with the drone, and confirm whether or not it was, human error or it was environmental factors while the drone was in flight, so on and so forth. And I think that is something that is not only extremely beneficial to companies and enterprises, but that is what is going to be very valuable to regulators. Because as you think of, scaling drone operations globally, this is not stuff that we can keep up with manually. We just don't have enough skilled people in the aerospace industry, in air traffic control, etc., to be able to support such a large ecosystem of drones. And that's where we want to be able to augment the human capability using the system, being able to provide data that, they can look at and with confidence say, okay, this data is accurate. You don't have to go searching for the data and then worry about whether or not it's accurate.
That's brilliant. Now, while you mention a little bit more into the technology of SkyGrid, maybe perhaps you could shine light on why SkyGrid would choose that specific EOS over other blockchains.
So it really boils down to a number of things. We when we were initially exploring a blockchain to kind of roll out, the big things that we wanted were flexibility. A blockchain that had a very active community that was seeing active development, and not saying EOS was the only answer there, but EOS was one of the right answers for us in that particular aspect. It gives us, like I said, the ability to have a private chain, create whatever smart contracts we want. It's helping us with this off-chain storage that I mentioned, being able to create that ramp of tying off-chain data storage to the blockchain, having records of that. So really hit the benchmarks for us, was giving us the right transactions per second that we needed, that we were thinking about when when you talk about scaling, because what we don't want is to end up with a very long block time where it takes a while to write a block and essentially confirm all of the transactions that are going through. So I think it was all of those reasons.
Right. So since the inception of SkyGrid, right, I'm sure there has been numerous use cases already. Maybe you could explore 1-2 use cases you found created the most impact in terms of wherein using SkyGrid created value that could not have been able to be replicated on either, a different sort of either like a air management system that doesn't actually deploy AI and blockchain, or vice versa. Could you perhaps shine light on a few cases you found made the most impact?
Sure. And, I think there are a few, if any, use cases that I can point to and say, they would be more important than being able to save lives. So that is one that I would go with. We've been working very closely with emergency medical services here in Texas, and there are large green belts located, in the city of Austin, around Austin, etc., where you have a lot of hikers ending up going missing, getting injured, or worse. The current system that it was in place relied on helicopters being flown over those areas. There's a significant delay in getting a helicopter in the air, getting over the area, and sometimes it ends up being too late. So using the SkyGrid platform and using our iPad application, what we're able to do is, essentially, let's say your emergency medical services, you have this iPad, you have a few off-the-shelf drones, you take them out, you turn them on, they show up as drones that are ready and available for a mission. You select an area that you would like them to survey, and they will take off, and each drone will have its own uniquely generated route in that entire area. So you're getting parallel coverage, from 5 different drones, however many you want to use, and you're getting their camera streams feeding back onto your iPad, augmented with machine learning vision models that we've deployed that will, detect, in this case, a person, and be able to transmit their exact coordinates to the EMS operators. So essentially, there was already a solution in place. Why is this better? Because it's a lot more scalable, it's a lot quicker, and there is less kind of cost of deploying this versus having helicopters at the ready, being able to fly over different areas at short notice. This is just someone getting into their vehicle, getting out to an area, turning on a few drones and hitting launch. That's one that is, very relevant and very near and dear to us at SkyGrid. Another one is the ability to enable remote autonomous operations, where you can be operating out of a central command. You can have drones available to you all over the world or all over the country or city, and being able to create flight plans for those drones, hitting a single button, and then remotely having these drones with just a person who would be monitoring them on the ground, just so that you're not violating any regulations. You see that drone take off halfway across the world, perform its mission, collect video, collect images, upload those to video and image processing pipeline, and get all of that data marked up with the insights that you want to see. So these are the two that I would point to that I think are very useful and very practical. The one where you're able to do search and rescue, and another one, and this, you could also do search and rescue in this way, where you're remotely planning the flights, and all you need is an operator on the ground who can take manual control or be accountable for the drone and have it within their visual line of sight, unless you have waivers, in which case then you don't need a person on the ground, and you can just remotely launch drones from any of your distribution facilities.
Thank you very much, Ali. That was very fascinating, because if we tie it back to the theme of the conference, which is disruption, we essentially wanted to show that, blockchain isn't something of the future, that it is already making change in the present. It's very interesting to hear about how SkyGrid fits into the role of disruption. Now, while you mentioned these use cases that made the most impact, what were the sort of challenges and actual realities of implementing said technologies into very traditional systems and ecosystems?
The biggest challenge is not a technological one, and it goes back to one of the other questions that we were just discussing here. The primary challenge in the aerospace industry is that safety is the most critical thing. And so there are a number of processes. I mean, technologically, like we were just discussing, you can do remote operations, right? You can have drones fly out of visual line of sight, etc. But in order to practically be able to do that, there are ConOps that you must create. There is approval that you must get from regulatory agencies, and that the main reason for that is that you can provide them with data that proves that these operations will be safe. Blockchain is a key enabler in order to prove that operations are safe, having data that is the integrity of which is preserved, and having a system that is essentially built on the principles of being able to audit and track and have this accountability around the decisions that are being made, and also explainability into why those decisions are made. And I think that is something key to enable scaling.
Thank you very much, Ali. Now, one thing that I wanted to explore is actually about the idea of entering this space. because a majority of attendees here today with us, hundreds of students are actually here with us today, and they're all wondering the same question. How do we actually enter an industry that is very niche, that hasn't been explored very much around the globe at the moment? And I mean, for SkyGrid in particular, it's a very niche area. It solves solutions that are very particular, and the technology is very new, so it's going to take time for people to trust in it and for it to be widely adopted. So for people who want to enter the industry, whether that may be the blockchain industry in the larger sense, or whether that may be the merging of blockchain and aviation, what sort of insights would you give in terms of how they could enter the industry, and perhaps maybe shed light on your own journey when you were entering the space as a newly novice?
Sure, I think that's a wonderful question. You know, one of the cool things of entering a space where which is new is that there are no experts because it's just something that didn't exist a few years back. So I think the most important thing is to have general skills. So I mean, if you have a background in computer science and that's something that you've studied, blockchain is going to be blockchain technology is something that you can specialize in, but your general knowledge of computer science and programming, etc., will be beneficial. So number one is, the right kind of background. But I think even more important than that, and this is, this was the most useful thing for me personally, is the ability to learn on the job and be open to, just be interested in learning about new things. And technology is one of those things where, you constantly have to stay up to date with all of the stuff that's happening. Or, if you're interested in programming languages, for example, you'd want to keep up with the most popular programming languages at the time. And as you know, there have been many shifts before Python and JavaScript became so widespread. So I think just having the general background in either aviation or computer science is beneficial. I don't think that is 100% critical to enter an industry like ours. I think the primary thing is showing that this is something that you're passionate about and that you're a continuous learner.
Thank you so much, Ali. I'm going to take one more question from the crowd before wrapping this session up. It's a very interesting one by Jamie. As AI develops further, how will accountability be affected when developers and programmers can't explain why certain decisions have been made by algorithms?
It's a great question. And the answer to that is that you can limit the action space for AI algorithms and ensure that the outcome of a particular decision model is going to be within a certain range. And I think that is that's one of the key concepts that we're using when you talk about certification of a system and being able to, explain why a certain action is being taken, and also guarantee that, if the goal is for me to fly from point A to point B, so the action shouldn't be that, the drone turns off, just as a random example. You want actions that are going to be relevant to the action space, and you want those actions to be constrained within, operational bounds. And then in addition to that, you have all of the data that is being collected and being fed into these decision-making models. So I think with a combination of these three things, you're able to do a pretty good job of explaining the decisions and also ensuring that those decisions are relevant to those actions are relevant to the problem at hand.
Thank you so much, Ali. I hope that answers your question, Jamie. With that being said, I wanted to wrap up this session and want to give a major thank you to Ali. That was very insightful. I definitely learned a lot and enjoyed a lot. So everyone here who enjoyed the presentation today, do have a look at SkyGrid and all the latest innovations that are in track. Thank you so much, Ali. Without further ado.
Thank you so much for having me.